All right, welcome in. This is FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name is Matt Striker. His name is Joe Pisapia, and this is the place if you want to dominate, whether it's season-long, DFS, straight-up wagering, whatever it is, we've got you covered. Really quickly, a reminder here. Just do the discount double check. Make sure you're following along at SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV. We're going to be giving you everything you need ahead of the football season. We have the man, the author of the Fantasy Black Book, the one and only Joe Pisapia. We are talking wall-to-wall football, my friend. Welcome, and how are you?
I am good, man. I'm excited because yesterday, again, the Flex League drafts, my good buddy Jake Seeley puts that together every year, a panel of some of the best experts in the fantasy football space. So you got the Jeff Ratcliffes, you got the Jamie Eisenbergs from CBS, you've got Adam Ronis, and then me, Joey P, also hanging out there. 2 years ago, champion, 4 years ago, champion. So I'm like in one of those weird, like every other kind of year, like, so I got to get back on track. Last year, a lot of injuries, but that is one of the toughest rooms to actually, be successful in, because you can take ADP, you can crumple it up and throw it out the window in those drafts. It does not matter. And I think that's a good lesson for everybody. ADP in fantasy football is polling. It's a suggestion. It's not truth. It's not necessarily how every draft is going to be. The one thing I will say is do your homework, get your players within reason, and don't be afraid to go out on a limb sometimes if the strategy actually makes sense. And we're going to talk about that next week. We're going to look at that Superflex draft, what you can do in your Superflex leagues to kind of mirror that strategy, because that's what we're trying to do here. Put our money where our mouth is, help you draft the best teams you possibly can. And Matt, as we look at the headlines, it looks like a wide receiver in Chicago is going to be in the Caleb Williams arsenal for a few years now.
As he should be. The Bears give DJ Moore 4 years, $110 million contract extension. Joe, you have come on this show the past few weeks and tempered expectations with regards to Williams, with regards to the environment, with regards to history, mentioning something to the effect of never has anyone thrown for over 4,000 yards at Soldier Field. Does this change anything for you now?
It doesn't. I think if you look at DJ Moore, I think he's priced appropriately, somewhere around wide receiver 20. I think if you're somebody that likes to go with the Bijan Robinsons or Breece Halls in that first round, then you have to make up some ground in your wide receiver room. Some combination of Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore. You can get two of those three guys. It's a pretty good beginning to a roster, I think. And I think you will go to war with that and be pretty good. If you look at the projections for DJ Moore, I think they're kind of spot on. If you look at it, 1,000 yards receiving, 77 catches. I think he might be able to get a little higher into the 80s personally. And 7 touchdowns. That all seems about right. DJ Moore has been an incredibly steady presence in incredibly volatile quarterback situations throughout his career, which is great credit to him. Caleb Williams is the best quarterback talent that he's ever played with. There's no doubt about that. But he is still a rookie, and there's still a lot of questions to answer there. So there's some places that'll project DJ Moore well above this. Now, I think this projection level you're seeing is kind of a floor for Moore, and I think that's good. If you are bidding on this and he gives you more than that, then I think you are very happy. I don't think he gives you less than this, even if Caleb Williams should have some peaks and valleys in his season. I think he'll still be all right. But I think when you're looking at the DJ Moore, the player, the value, what he's been able to do in his career over those years, it's nice that he's also got some help with Keenan Allen on the other side. It's nice that Rome Odunze's come into, so even if Allen struggles at any given time with health, he's an older player, that it's not all focused on DJ Moore being the only guy. Now, that being said, we also saw an offense where last year DJ Moore was the target volume, right? He basically was that guy, which was great. But Fields isn't there. Some different structures going on, different quarterback. We'll see how things evolve. But I think as wide receiver 20, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a good move by the Bears to lock him up. A veteran presence is good. Let Rome Odunze grow at his own pace and develop at that NFL level without the kind of pressure. And what a great tree to learn under. Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, two guys who've had great success in the National Football League. So I think that is a great situation. And maybe the Bears are starting, maybe, just maybe, to get back on the right track.
Great job by you, as always, Joe. Now, we can spend some time talking about if we should concern ourselves when we hear certain names splitting first-team reps. We can talk about some of the injuries in Cleveland, but I see that our graphics team actually wants to bring this Aaron Rodgers unlikely to play in the preseason and bump it all the way up. Now, we have some time here in this segment. So, Joe, I'm going to let you roll here. Aaron Rodgers unlikely to play in the preseason. Joe Pisapia, your thoughts?
I understand you want to put him in bubble wrap. I get it, especially after last year. But this is football. You need some reps. I know Aaron Rodgers is, played for a very long time. I understand that sometimes those veterans don't play in those preseason games, and I get you have less preseason games and all that stuff. But he didn't play football for an entire year last year. So I think a couple reps in a preseason game wouldn't be the worst thing. To be honest with you, Matt, I think the last thing you want to do if you were Aaron Rodgers would to go into the regular season without any preseason game reps. I think that would be the worst thing. I think you want to get out there, shake the dust off a little, just kind of even 1 series, 2 series under you, and then move into the season. I mean, come on here. If it's that bad and we're that protective of him, it doesn't bode well for the rest of the season. Now, I will say this. I think the Jets did a much better job of getting them some help if and when Aaron Rodgers misses any time during the season, if another injury should befall him. He is an older player. And he was a player in decline in Green Bay, too. Statistically, go look at it. 2 years ago, this was a quarterback in decline in every metric you could possibly find. Doesn't mean he can't win football games. Doesn't mean the Jets can't win that division with that defense. But, Matt, you and I both know we're from New York. We have seen Jet expectations be high before. And I don't think they've ever, in my lifetime at least, seen them be cashed in on. So be leery, be skeptical. And as far as playing in the preseason, I think it's frankly a mistake. I get it. You want to protect this guy as much as you can. But I think you want to win some football games. And I think you want to get back out there and be a part of this team, especially since you weren't around for some of the optional minicamp stuff. I don't know, Matt. This is a tough one for me. I have some predispositions about this player, a Hall of Fame player, a talent. There's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. But I think there's 2 kinds of quarterbacks. The great statistical quarterbacks that are just great talents. And then there's the kind of quarterbacks that are leaders and the guys that everybody wants to run through a wall for. I don't know, man. I think we're going to learn a lot about football from Tom Brady this year sitting in the booth. Maybe way more than watching Aaron Rodgers play. How's that for you?
Who's backing up Aaron Rodgers this year?
Tyrod Taylor. Let's go.
Joe, what are your thoughts about Tyrod Taylor leading this team in about the 8th or 9th week?
A decent quarterback that I would be pretty sound with. I mean, Tyrod Taylor has had the worst luck. He's had his lung punctured. He's had starting jobs given to him basically, and then gotten hurt. He has come in and performed well when been asked. He's an athletic quarterback. Even for the Giants last year, you saw some moments where he came in and played well. So at least you got something there to back up now, which you didn't have last year. The Jets are going to run the football a ton. Mike Williams, I'm still very skeptical about that addition. You have the guy who has the most lower leg injuries. You put him on the hardest turf in the entire NFL, and we expect that to go well. I just don't understand the mindset of these things sometimes. The organization makes these weird choices. And let me be 100% honest here, too. The offensive coordinator is an absolute nightmare. He's not the coordinator. Aaron Rodgers is, okay? Right. And he was exposed when he became head coach of the Denver Broncos. We saw what a complete disaster it was. He was a guy that kind of came through the ranks. I don't think Hackett is any good. I think the last name recognition goes a long way sometimes in the NFL, sometimes too far. And I am still very skeptical of this Jets team. Let's go prove it on the field. Maybe play a little preseason too, just to see if Aaron Rodgers can kind of get in that groove. I'm just saying, it's been a year since you played football. A year.
Folks, if you wanted it, there it was. I knew it. Our producers knew it. We had to set Joe loose. But Joe, anyone that wants to argue with you, feel free. Get on social media and do it. But Joe, you make some good points, and those are hard to refute. So a tip of the cap to you, my friend.
The most dangerous thing in this world is a Jet fan with high expectations, Matt. Very dangerous. Very dangerous. When we come back, we're going to start doing some team previews again. We've got the Packers. We've got the Texans. We've got the Colts. Some big names on the board for your fantasy leagues. We'll tell you who to draft when we return.
Recently, I feel like I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not making bad swings. I don't feel like I'm making terrible decisions, and just had got a little bit of a streak of bad luck on par fives. Didn't birdie any of them at the Open, didn't birdie any of them today. It's just, and I didn't feel like I did anything terribly wrong, right? But that's just golf. It happens. What's done is done, and this week is the most important week of the year right now.
He lands it pin high, he's going to be off over the pin position and leave himself a tough putt there. That should bite now. He didn't like it by the looks of it, but he'll love it when he sees it.
Just get this before that bunker. Put himself in a good position.
Just a tiny little baby fade, ideally placed.
To tie the lead at 16. Oh, he's playing well, isn't he, John Rahm?
And OMG, what a championship Sunday we just witnessed.
Win, right? Selfishly, you always want to get that done, but you don't want to see a teammate and a good friend, missing a putt for that happening for me.
The Live Golf League delivers every single event, doesn't it? I mean, what an incredible finish there. You know what, Tyrrell Hatton, I feel for him. He's been playing beautiful golf. In fact, since Miami, he's been the best player in our league based on the strokes gained metric.
I'm really happy that I had my first Live Golf win. Now that Kelly and the kids are watching, just knowing that I'm bringing the trophy home for them, it feels good to say that it's coming home.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia, a part of the SportsGrid family, giving you the best programming. Diving in now, FST team previews. We've been going in alphabetical order for the upcoming NFL season. If you missed anything, go back, search it out. We are up to the letter G. It is time for the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm kidding. Time for the Green Bay Packers here. And in the segment before, Joe was just giving all of his love to Aaron Rodgers, but the Green Bay Packers are a much different team without Aaron Rodgers. So let's preview this team and let's start at quarterback. Joe?
Yeah, well, it turns out the Packers weren't a welfare case after Brett Favre left. See what I did there? And it turns out that the Aaron Rodgers departure wasn't the end of the Green Bay Packers either. In fact, it was the beginning of anew for the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love, who many were skeptical, why did they draft Jordan Love? Why did they spend the draft capital? Well, turns out LaFleur and the Packers knew exactly what they were doing because they got their next franchise quarterback, because he wasn't good. He was great last year down the stretch. Did not turn the ball over. A guy that went 20 with 3 interceptions to touchdowns in that span. Unbelievable span for him in the second half of the season, where he really looked extremely confident. And now the hope is that you get a healthy Christian Watson in 2024. That goes a very long way for this team, because Christian Watson is the most talented wide receiver. You had Jaden Reed show that he was very versatile, a guy that could show up in the red zone. Romeo Doubs is another solid wide receiver. Also, don't forget about Dontavian Wicks, another guy who's a splashy playmaker guy. They have 4 very viable wide receivers, and Jordan Love looked very confident last season. Also, 2 very capable tight ends, Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. Now, Musgrave is the guy that you want for fantasy purposes. From the running back standpoint, Josh Jacobs is another one of these guys that kind of scares me. Typically, again, Derrick Henry's the outlier. Let me be very clear about that. Every situation has its outlier. Derrick Henry is the outlier to the situation I'm going to bring you today. When you have running backs getting older, moving teams, typically it doesn't always go well. We'll talk about Joe Mixon in just a second. We'll talk about Josh Jacobs here. Jacobs already dealing with some issues. They also drafted Marshawn Lloyd, who in my opinion is one of the top backs in the draft. And you've got nothing but incredible praise from LaFleur and his coaching staff about Marshawn Lloyd. So it's not that Josh Jacobs isn't going to be the starter or the lead guy, but you can certainly write a script where at some point in the season, maybe Marshawn Lloyd starts to take over a little bit into that workload or eat into it a little bit, and that could hurt Jacobs' value in the second half. Again, it's not that you can't draft Josh Jacobs, but his current ADP is a little tough for me to swallow. I'd rather be waiting on guys like Zamir White or Ramondre Stevenson than going and drafting Josh Jacobs. I think that's a dangerous game to play. But to me, the guy that really stands out is Christian Watson, a guy that you can draft as wide receiver 40 that could end up as wide receiver 20 or maybe even wide receiver 15 if everything breaks right. The problem with Watson's been the hamstring issues. He has had what's called basically an unevenness in the hamstring muscles, and they continue to pull because of the unevenness, right? It's something. It's a condition that
How do you
actually
make it to the
is,
NFL and have a condition of uneven hamstring muscles and they keep getting pulled?
You're an absurdly good talent, but medically, this is what they've diagnosed it with, where it was a muscle issue, and now he is working specifically to even that out.
For you too.
Hey man, this is what happens when you constantly put the right foot forward. If you're Christian Watson, eventually that right foot, it just gets so much stronger than the left. I don't know. All I'm telling you is Christian Watson's a guy that's going too late in drafts. Christian Watson is a guy that can well outperform his ADP, and that's how you win leagues. Drafting guys at wide receiver 4 who become 3s, 3s who become 2s, 2s who become 1s. That's how it rolls.
Good press coming out of camp. I've been reading that Romeo Doubs has been impressive, but again, it's so early on, but something to keep an eye on. All right, a team that I'm keeping an eye on are the Houston Texans. So let's go and have the conversation. You alluded to Joe Mixon being one of those running backs turning 30, going to a new team. I think Joe Mixon is the reason I'm so excited for the offensive ecosystem that you could read all about in the Black Book of the Houston Texans. Joe, talk to me.
You know, that same league I was talking about earlier, I drafted CJ Stroud last year in the 12th round. Nobody believed in him. Nobody wanted him. On this show, we talked about it over and over. He went in the first round, Matthew. He went in the first round, the top 10 picks. I think he went 8 overall, I believe, or 7 overall. So CJ Stroud even outperformed my expectations, which were significantly higher than most. And he had a great season. The difference with the Houston Texans now is it's fun to play the plucky underdog. You know, this was the transition the Lions had to make, right, last year, where, you know, you're the lovable losers and nobody thinks you can be there. And all of a sudden you show up and you play hard and you make the playoffs, right? And then the Lions last year had to play with expectations. Now this year, the Houston Texans are the team that has to play with expectations. And that's going to be very fun to watch. Now, I think DeMeco Ryans is a great coach. I think that this defense is much better than people realize. The offensive line had some health issues early in the year. When they got healthy, this offense really kind of took off in the second half. And they've gone out and addressed some of the issues. Now, Dameon Pierce was the RB of choice there, but then Devin Singletary kind of took over. It got muddy there. Pierce really struggled at times. So Joe Mixon comes in. But the real star to me of this offense is Nico Collins. I know Stephon Diggs is the bigger name. I know a lot of people are going to go to Stephon Diggs. Second half of Stephon Diggs was not good last year. And when you have wide receivers 10 years in the league, this is what happens. You know who else is 10 years in the league? DeAndre Hopkins, right? What's he got right now? Missing 4 to 6 weeks. With an issue, with an injury. Now, I'm not saying he's going to miss all the time in the world. All I'm saying is you have to understand we've seen this happen time and time again with wide receivers when they hit, you know, about that 10 years in, you see decline. It's natural. It's the NFL. So I think Nico Collins proved last year that he is that dude. You see the projections here for him, 1,138 yards, 7 touchdowns. Again, I think that's basically of the floor of him, 78 catches. I think you're looking more like 85 to 89 catches. I think you're looking more like 8 to 10 touchdown range for sure. And I know Tank Dell is there too, and he's a fun player, explosive player. They're going to be a lot to handle again. Dalton Schultz is going to get hurt the most by Stephon Diggs because there's just only so many mouths to feed in that offense you can get the ball to. And I think the one guy you could see maybe taking a step back if Diggs is healthy and Tank Dell is healthy, it's Schultz. Now, if one of those guys should have an injury or miss time, Schultz becomes a more interesting cog in this offense. But I still believe Nico Collins is that guy. ADP continues to agree. He's being drafted as wide receiver 13. I think that's a great spot there. Still skeptical, though, about Joe Mixon at his age in the new roster. I think he can be good, but I don't want to overrate him either. I think that is a dangerous game to play in terms of the ADP. Again, Mixon, Jacobs, back-to-back, 13 and 14. I'd rather wait and take Ramondre Stevenson, maybe a James Conner a little cheaper and not have to make quite that investment in ADP. We come back. Which team could really blow up the AFC South? We'll tell you right after this.
Recently, I feel like I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not making bad swings. I don't feel like I'm making terrible decisions, and just had got a little bit of a streak of bad luck on par fives. Didn't birdie any of them at the Open, didn't birdie any of them today. It's just, and I didn't feel like I did anything terribly wrong, right? But that's just golf. It happens. What's done is done, and this week is the most important week of the year right now.
If he lands it pin high, he's going to be off over the pin position and leave himself a tough putt there. That should bite now. He didn't like it by the looks of it, but he'll love it when he sees it.
Just get this before that bunker. Put himself in a good position.
Just a tiny little baby fade, ideally placed.
To tie the lead at 16. Oh, he's playing well, isn't he, John Rahm?
And OMG, what a championship Sunday we just witnessed.
Win, right? Selfishly, you always want to get that done, but you don't want to see a teammate and a good friend, missing a putt for that happening for me.
The Live Golf League delivers every single event, doesn't it? I mean, what an incredible finish there. You know what, Tyrrell Hatton, I feel for him. He's been playing beautiful golf. In fact, since Miami, he's been the best player in our league based on the strokes gained metric.
I'm really happy that I had my first Live Golf win. Now that Kelly and the kids are watching, just knowing that I'm bringing the trophy home for them, it feels good to say that it's coming home.
All right, welcome back into FST. It's Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia giving you everything you need in order to dominate. We're doing it through conversation. Of course, Joe is the author of the Fantasy Black Book. It's available right now. It's just changed the way people have approached their drafts, their wagering, and pretty much if you lose in your fantasy football leagues year over year, I'll bet you 8 times out of 10 the person that won your league has the Black Book. It's just how it is. We're doing our team previews here. Before we went to the break, we talked about the Houston Texans. During the break, I asked Joe, hey, who comes out of that division? Joe's answer was the team that we're going to preview next. Joe, talk about the Colts.
Yeah, maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid at Indianapolis. I don't know. But Shane Steichen to me is just the next level offensive-minded coach in the NFL. And you saw what he did with that Eagles offense a couple years ago. You saw that he took a team that didn't have a healthy Jonathan Taylor or a Jonathan Taylor period for most of the year. That's right. And didn't have Anthony Richardson for, 14, 16 games, something like that, somewhere in there, right? They only had him for 3 games, really, Anthony Richardson. Yeah. And got to the playoffs with Gardner Minshew. Like, let's put that in focus for a moment, shall we? Like, that is an incredible job of coaching. I'm not letting things fall apart for a team. And I am so excited about what Anthony Richardson could be. Anthony Richardson has a cannon for an arm. He is built like a linebacker, and he runs like a running back. That's something I don't know if this league has ever quite seen. And that is, we talk about the Shohei Ohtani stuff in hour 1 about, like, we're witnessing something really historic here. As much as I thought C.J. Stroud last year was the most NFL-ready quarterback by a country mile last year to come in and be good, even though people are talking about Bryce Young and people want Will Levis and all that stuff, it was always C.J. Stroud. But from a fantasy perspective, Anthony Richardson is the more exciting quarterback because of the rushing equity he brings. Now, will it take time for him to figure some of the nuances of quarterback out? Yes. He is an extraordinary young man, though. I mean, any interview you see with him, I would love to interview him. But you watch all the combine stuff, you get an opportunity to really kind of get this kid. And just like C.J. Stroud, he has that intangible leadership quality. He has that thing where he has that drive. And it was really unfortunate we only got a glimpse of how special he could be last year. But when he was in last year and healthy, he was averaging 25 points a game at quarterback. That's a huge number here for a kid his first month into his NFL career. It can only get better. Michael Pittman is a very strong reason why. Michael Pittman is one of the more underrated wide receiver ones in the league. You look at these yardage totals here, 1,069, 97 receptions, 5 touchdowns. I think it could look a lot more like 1,100 to 1,200 yards. I think it could look like over 100 catches, and I think it could look like 8 touchdowns. Now, the thing with the touchdowns is, as you get closer there, you have Jonathan Taylor, and you have Richardson also you have to worry about in the red zone. So those guys are going to monopolize a lot of that. So The touchdown total could be underwhelming like this projection. I don't think it's going to be a 5. I don't think it's going to be that underwhelming. I think Michael Pittman is one of these, I think, the last guys where people, if you know, you know, and if you're drafting him, you are ready for it because there could be a very special season for him. Another guy, too, that's really starting to get a lot of positive buzz out of camp is Josh Downs. Josh Downs, more of that deep threat, take the top off the defense kind of guy. They drafted A.D. Mitchell, too, who, you know, certainly has, I think, a work in progress, an interesting guy, another guy that's got some speed and some downfield ability. But Downs seems to be the guy that the connectivity is there with. Jelani Woods at tight end, and, of course, the aforementioned Jonathan Taylor at running back. The Colts are set up here for a good situation. The Colts are set up that if Jonathan Taylor comes in, has a full healthy season, that 1-2 combination of Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, what that's going to allow is some incredible play action, some incredible play calling, some incredible things where as you're a defense, you have your hands full with this team in a big way. And I think when you're looking at the Colts, that's why they become a really tough thing for any defense, even a good one like the Texans to handle. So I'm looking at the Colts right now is that if the Texans don't live up to expectations, and expectations are something that's tough and it wears on younger teams because they're not always sure how to deal with it. The Colts are a team that I think is where the inverse is, where they don't have as high of expectations. It's all potential. And they already last year kind of exceeded any expectations that they possibly had. So expectantial. I just made a new it.
It's a good one. You did.
When expectations meet potential.
There you go.
Exponential. And they have exponential potential. There you go. I'm Joe Pisapia, and I approve this message. Yeah.
With the time that we have left, how would Jiminy Glick compare and contrast the offensive ecosystem of the Colts and the Texans? Take us to break.
There's a lot of possible things out there for everybody. You've got Anthony Richardson. He's huge. Does he play linebacker? I don't know. He's a quarterback, they tell me. I think they're wrong. I think he's in the wrong side of the locker room. But he is, man. I mean, that's one of our favorite characters. We talk in that voice all the time in between. It is hysterical. Shout out to Martin Short. You get Martin Short on the show. I'm sure he loves fantasy football.
Marty's a big fan.
But seriously, then, Anthony Richardson in those single quarterback leagues this year, going around the 5th or 6th quarterback, right around Stroud, I think I'd rather have Richardson. We'll be right back after this.
Recently, I feel like I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not making bad swings. I don't feel like I'm making terrible decisions, and just had got a little bit of a streak of bad luck on par 5s. Didn't birdie any of them at the Open, didn't birdie any of them today. It's just, and I didn't feel like I did anything terribly wrong, right? But that's just golf. It happens. What's done is done, and this week is the most important week of the year right now.
If he lands it pin high, he's going to be off over the pin position and leave himself a tough putt there. That should bite now. He didn't like it by the looks of it, but he'll love it when he sees it.
Just got this before that bunker. Put himself in a good position.
Just a tiny little baby fade, ideally placed.
To tie the lead at 16. Playing well, isn't he, John Rahm?
And OMG, what a championship Sunday we just witnessed.
Win, right? Selfishly, you always want to get that done, but you don't want to see a teammate and a good friend, missing a putt for that happening for me.
The Live Golf League delivers every single event, doesn't it? I mean, what an incredible finish there. You know what, Tyrrell Hatton, I feel for him. He's been playing beautiful golf. In fact, since Miami, he's been the best player in our league based on the strokes gained metric.
I'm really happy that I had my first Live Golf win. Now that Kelly and the kids are watching, just knowing that I'm bringing a trophy home for them, it feels good to say that it's coming home.
All right, welcome back into FST. It's Fantasy Sports Today. Matt, Joe with you here.
Welcome back, everybody, to FST. We're going to continue to break down the teams here, but we're going to take a moment for out of the team previews just for a second here. We're going to talk about some lottery tickets for your NFL season. Now, some of the players on this list are ones that can really make your fantasy team special. And Matt, as we start to look at some of these names, it is about finding league winners. It is about finding guys where there's some risk and some upside potentially. And I think when you're looking at a guy like, let's just say Devon Achane, you're talking about a player that could really be that lottery ticket to a championship. Now, the thing when it comes to Devon Achane is you're dealing with a player that is a little smaller frame, but he is exactly the same frame as Jahmyr Gibbs, a player that I'm super high on in his respective offense. So Devon Achane runs in a very fast tempo, very efficient Miami Dolphins offense. You look at some of the projections for him, 900 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, a guy who can also catch the ball in the backfield. Now, I know Raheem Mostert was that guy last year that had a ton of touchdowns, but Raheem Mostert is in his 30s now. And I don't think we can copy and paste last season for him. It's not that Mostert goes away necessarily, but he's also a player that has struggled with injuries throughout his NFL career. Devon Achane, on the other hand, now that's a player that has enormous upside. They also drafted Jalen Wright, another running back who could eventually kind of take over that Mostert goal line role. But we're talking about explosiveness, and we're talking about a running back like Devon Achane. You're talking about a guy who could end up potentially as a top 3 running back in fantasy. That's the kind of upside. Now, what's interesting is you're kind of paying for that already. He is RB 10 right now on most people's boards, or 11, somewhere in that range, right around guys like Isaiah Pacheco, who's a little safer, Travis Etienne, who's a little safer, ahead of Rachaad White, which makes sense because Rachaad White is a player that is a little bit more steady Eddie than he is explosive and fun. Nothing wrong with Rachaad White. Rachaad White isn't going to necessarily win you a league, but as an RB2, he's going to help you win a league. Whereas Devon Achane could be a player that wins you your league in that Miami offense that is so good, so explosive, so incredible. So, Matt, I think we got you back now. When we're looking at players like Devon Achane, again, it's somewhere between the steadier, calmer versions of Rachaad White, where you just take the guy that you feel like, okay, am I going to get 17 productive games out of this player? Probably. But I'm also leaving on the table the explosiveness, the danger that is Devon Achane in a fantasy league, who could be a guy that wins you weeks. And I think Achane's that player. Guys like Pacheco, maybe that player. Maybe Rachaad White isn't that player. But what do you think about Achane? Is he worth the risk at the 10th RB overall for you?
Well, here's the thing. At the end of the day, it's called lottery tickets for a reason. Now, guy going that high, it's not necessarily a lottery ticket because you are spending just a little bit more. But if he goes off, you want to be the roster that has him. So it's completely worth it for H. And that offense was absolutely incredible last year. Remember those that were late to the bus finally getting in there, wagering in the final weeks of the surge? We laugh at those people. We don't want to be that. I think Achane is a huge part of what Miami can do, and I want to be in on the upside and not have to be looking from the outside in. It's the same thing when you're talking about Indianapolis as well. You outlined how a certain player on that team is unique to the game, and if the game is broken, we have to find a way to wager upon that, Joe.
Yeah, and Anthony Richardson, who we just kind of highlighted, I want to look at the projections for him to kind of highlight those upside numbers that could be there. So here's coming from Fantasy Pros. Again, QB 6 off the board, ECR QB 5. He's right around there. Him and Stroud are kind of neck and neck. Joe Burrow in that range as well. Usually it's Mahomes, it's Allen, it's Jalen Hurts, it's Lamar Jackson, and then the Richardson conversation. Now, the good news is if you're a single quarterback league, you're going to have that flare go up when quarterbacks start going off the board. And you know, okay, this is when I have to pay attention to, do I want to get an elite quarterback? And if Mahomes goes, Allen goes, you see that, you can wait it out. And then you can take Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson doesn't make it to you, Anthony Richardson is really interesting because then you have a shot at all the same upside as those other guys. And probably with Saquon Barkley there now in Philadelphia and Jason Kelce gone, I don't know if you're going to have 15 rushing touchdowns again for Jalen Hurts. If you're looking at a guy who could have double-digit 10 or 12 rushing touchdowns, to me, that guy is Anthony Richardson. He's projected for 8 and 646 rushing yards. I think he can go well over 700 rushing yards this year, and I think he can go well over double-digit touchdowns. I think he is that guy, and he is so much bigger than a lot of these other quarterbacks that physically he's just a lot to handle at the goal line. So I think he's going to get a ton of opportunities there. The 15 from Allen and the 15 from Jalen Hurts, those rushing touchdowns, I think they both come back down to earth this year. I really do. You look at their historical totals, they're much closer to that 8 or 9 range. And if they are closer to that 8 or 9 range and Anthony Richardson just hits his floor, guess what? They're going to be really close in points. So wait for the Hurts, wait for the Allen, take the shot on Richardson, or just wait on quarterback and take guys like Jordan Love a little later. I think that's the way to look at it. But I think the upside for Anthony Richardson is undeniable, and he is a lottery ticket that can win you the league because you can continue for another round to take wide receivers, right? Correct. And then that next round coming back to you, take Anthony Richardson. Let that quarterback run happen, and then get it on that next tier where Richardson goes. And I think you have a really good situation where you're giving yourself that one more wide receiver 2 or 3 on your roster. Next thing you know, you have a quarterback just as good as all those quarterbacks potentially that just went around or even 2 earlier.
So following up on that great strategy, by the way, let's talk about whom some of those receivers may be. Where would Christian Watson fall? Who's going around him, and whom would you rather have?
Well, Watson currently is going at wide receiver 40, which is kind of absurd because if you look at the consensus, DeAndre Hopkins, who, again, this will probably adjust after the injury, but the fact that they were even going close to each other, I think is absurd. You're talking about a wide receiver who is up there in age on a transitioning Titans team with a new offense in place. I think there's a lot of questions there. Hollywood Brown. Okay, yeah, he plays with Patrick Mahomes, but he's not the talent that Christian Watson is. Jackson Smith and Jigba going in that same range. Now, JSN, definitely a talent, pedigree from Ohio State, all the things you're looking for in an NFL wide receiver. But what's the quarterback situation there? It ain't Jordan Love, it's Geno Smith, who's already also dealing with an injury of his own, and he's still behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in terms of theoretical target share. Now, JSN could take over for Tyler Lockett this year. That could happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So once you get past Terry McLaurin around 30, you've got guys like, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, JSN, and then there's Christian Watson kind of sitting in that middle. And to me, Watson is the guy that I would circle and say, can you see this player grossly outperforming this ADP easily? And the answer is yes. It's just a matter of health when it comes to Christian Watson. The quarterback play is there. The need for an alpha wide receiver is there. He's got a lot of guys to take the burden off of him too, where he's going to see a lot of single coverage. Watson lines up very well this year and is an extreme value.
All right, we've talked running back lottery tickets, quarterback lottery tickets. There's a wide receiver lottery ticket. You got a tight end for us?
I got a tight end ticket for you. And some people aren't going to like it because they've gotten burned in the past, but it's Kyle Pitts. And last year on many programs, I warned people, I love Kyle Pitts, one of my favorite tight end prospects that's ever come into the league. But when you're playing with the Marcus Mariotas of the world, and you're playing with the Desmond Ritters of the world over the last few years, or the Taylor Heineke's, things are not going to go well. And injuries and health were not his friend last year either. A healthy Kyle Pitts with Kirk Cousins can be a special talent. A guy that could challenge for tight end 1 overall talent that you could draft as tight end 6 or 7 this year. That is value. Wow. That's how you win drafts. Can he be as good as Laporta was last year? Yeah, he can be. Why? Because outside of Drake London, it's the Darnell Mooneys of the world and a few other players that you can, kind of kick around a little bit. There's no other big dog talent in that offense besides Drake London, Bijan Robinson, who are going to garner specific and consistent targets. Kyle Pitts is that guy. Kyle Pitts has an opportunity this year with Kirk Cousins, by far the best quarterback talent he's ever played with, to make a huge leap in productivity. You see the numbers, 876, 68 receptions, 5 touchdowns. I think he can obliterate all of these. Let's not forget, it's the same guy that has 1,000 yards receiving his rookie season. Big ups, big lottery tickets for Kyle Pitts. More NFL when we return on FST.
Recently, I feel like I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not making bad swings. I don't feel like I'm making terrible decisions, and just had got a little bit of a streak of bad luck on par 5s. Didn't birdie any of them at the Open, didn't birdie any of them today. It's just, and I didn't feel like I did anything terribly wrong, right? But that's just golf. It happens. What's done is done, and this week is the most important week of the year right now.
If he lands it pin high, he's going to be off over the pin position and leave himself a tough putt there. That should bite now. He didn't like it by the looks of it, but he'll love it when he sees it.
Just got this before that bunker. Put himself in a good position.
Just a tiny little baby fade, ideally placed.
To tie the lead at 16. Oh, he's playing well, isn't he, John Rahm?
And OMG, what a championship Sunday we just witnessed.
Win, right? Selfishly, you always want to get that done, but you don't want to see a teammate and a good friend, missing a putt for that happening for me.
The Live Golf League delivers every single event, doesn't it? I mean, what an incredible finish there. You know what, Tyrrell Hatton, I feel for him. He's been playing beautiful golf. In fact, since Miami, he's been the best player in our league based on the strokes gained metric.
I'm really happy that I had my first Live Golf win. Now that Kelly and the kids are watching, just knowing that I'm bringing the trophy home for them, it feels good to say that it's coming home.
All right, welcome back into FST. It's Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, currently previewing the teams for the upcoming NFL season, having the conversations about them that will allow us to go into our drafts being able to dominate, whether it's season-long drafts, whether we're playing DFS for those of us out there that are still cashing, and straight up wagering. Look, it's never too early to start your research. We're going in alphabetical order. If you missed anything, make sure you go back. It's all archived. We're up to the letter J, Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I had asked Joe earlier in the show the difference between Travis Etienne and Derrick Henry, and Joe went on a tirade. So, Joe, the Jacksonville Jaguars team preview, turn you loose.
Well, look, Travis Etienne's a nice player, a guy that 3 down back, catch the football, do everything you want. Maybe some inconsistencies at times, but I think that's more on the overall play of the Jacksonville Jaguars than anything else. Trevor Lawrence still a QB2 in this league. He hasn't quite hit his ceiling. At one point, we talked about him as a generational quarterback talent, and for a myriad of reasons, we just haven't quite gotten there yet. But he's also very young when he came into the league. I think people forget that. And I think we should cut him a little bit of slack there. There's plenty of room for him to grow. Last year, we were excited about Calvin Ridley coming into this offense. Unfortunately, it did not work out. Christian Kirk had some injuries too. But the guy that really stood out last year that carried this offense was actually Evan Ingram, who had a fantastic season. Now, you see some regression in these projections here. He is predicted to be the 8th tight end off the board, 786 yards, 85 receptions, 4 touchdowns. Now, that's a lot of receptions. So if you're in a PPR league and you wait on tight end and Evan Ingram falls in your lap, you could do a lot worse. They also paid Evan Ingram. So you know that this guy is part of this offense, and he's going to see his target share. 85 receptions is really good. And if you look at the structure of this offense currently, Brian Thomas Jr. comes in, right? He's a rookie, so we're going to have to give him some help. Christian Kirk, probably the alpha, the main target guy, but not quite an alpha in terms of size of receiver that you think about. So he's a little undersized for that role. He could still be a very good one. Again, I think what comes down to the Jacksonville Jaguars is efficiency. They brought in Gabe Davis this offseason too, a guy who has been very skeptical in terms of
of many things. He just reads things on the internet and rubs his chin.
Well, I mean, maybe, but like Gabe Davis is a guy that sometimes you just forgot that he played for the Buffalo Bills last year. I mean, he would have 1 or 2 good games in a season and then just disappear. I don't know if that is a product of Stephon Diggs demanding the football so much and the tunnel vision of Josh Allen and that offensive focus, or is it an indictment of Gabriel Davis as a player? I think those are questions we have to ask ourselves, but we don't know the answer. So to just invest in it blindly, I think is bad. I think it's bad fantasy right now. Could he be good? Could it be an explosive flex play? Maybe, but so could Brian Thomas. I think the Jaguars sum up like this. They're an interesting PPR team. They're a lower profile team, not as high profile as the next team we're going to talk about, some of the other teams we've already talked about today, like the Texans or the Colts, right? We're talking about a team that in PPR leagues, is Christian Kirk a value? Yeah. Is Evan Ingram a value? Yeah. Are they going to score as many touchdowns as we want? Maybe not. It still comes down to, can this offense work better? Can they take advantage of situations? Can they recapture some of that magic they had a couple years ago where things broke right for them and they were a playoff team and they backdoored their way into the playoffs? And last year, things went wrong. So who are the Jaguars? Maybe we get a better idea of it. But in terms of investment, they're a mid-level ecosystem that I talk about in the Black Book. Good for PPR, but if you're looking at those half PPR leagues where touchdowns matter, I think they've become a little bit of a harder suggestion to go out there and invest in.
For those that are new to some of these terms that we're using, it's okay to ask. The ecosystems basically just breaks down how this team offensively will work, and Joe can better explain it. But when you have a better ecosystem ranking, you're definitely going to produce more points and you're going to have more fantasy value. When you go to the Kansas City Chiefs, where do they rank on the offensive ecosystem, Joe?
Well, they're at the top of the board. No surprise there. Why? Offensive line, continuity, coaching, quarterback play, talent. They've got a lot of it, all of it. And it's hard not to think that they're going to be very motivated for this three-peat. They understand the history of this thing and no one's ever done it. And they believe they're the team to do it. And I think they've got some challengers in the AFC. I think the AFC is much tougher than the NFC this year, 100%. I think the NFC is very clear who the top dogs are, whereas the AFC is really open for business. You got the Ravens, you got the Bengals, you've got who knows what this Jets defense could potentially do. You still got the Bills kicking around, right? Maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers get hot. Mike Tomlin's a great coach. Who knows? It's still very wide open. But when it does come down to offensive ecosystem, in the Black Book, it's still Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs at the top of the board. And what's interesting, too, is they have found, I think, that running back that they have been searching for in Isaiah Pacheco. He's a tough runner. He runs like Marshawn Lynch, but he's not quite Marshawn Lynch size. So sometimes he does take his lumps and he does take some injuries. He is, I would say, a ferocious, violent, explosive kind of runner. And he's very fast as well. Sometimes I wish he would take a little less contact. Sometimes I wish he would go out of bounds a little bit more instead of trying to pick up that extra half a yard and save himself for an entire season. However, Isaiah Pacheco is being drafted as a top 10 running back, and I think that that's clear. Reasons why. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still in that backfield too. He's more of an insurance policy. Travis Kelce is still arguably the tight end one. What's interesting here is the wide receiver room that looks a little different than last year. Going into last year, we saw, we were sold a bill of goods on the Kadarius Tonys and then with the Juju Smith-Schusters a few years ago, and all these, we're trying to figure it out, right? But Patrick Mahomes is still a guy that threw for 5,000 yards 2 years ago, 4,800 yards the year before. Last year, the wide receivers flat out let him down. They did not catch balls. They were not in the places they needed to be. Time and time again, they were disappointing, not just to us as fantasy managers, but to Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City collectively. Okay, now you have Rashee Rice, who emerged last year. Hollywood Brown comes in, a veteran guy, more of a mistake guy who capitalizes on when a D-back makes a mistake potentially, and then all of a sudden, like Hollywood Brown gets free. Xavier Worthy, fastest guy in the draft, right? A guy that can really go out there, be like a Tyreek Hill explosive threat. But what's interesting is Rashee Rice's ADP has been suppressed because of a looming potential suspension of offseason issues. But that trial doesn't happen until December, as my colleague at Fantasy Pros pointed out, and Andrew Erickson. That could mean that this suspension gets pushed all the way till next year, if indeed that trial date holds. So maybe, just maybe, you're getting a guy in Rashee Rice who was an absolute red zone beast last year at a discount. And it's something to strongly consider because you want to be part of this Chiefs ecosystem. And if you can be part of it at a discount, that doesn't happen very often. So keep an eye on Rashee Rice in this news in the next few weeks as you enter your drafts, because he could be a value and another lottery ticket that could win you your league. When we come back, we're going to take a quick look at some win totals in the NFL. Over under, we'll tell you on FST.
Recently, I feel like I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not making bad swings. I don't feel like I'm making terrible decisions, and just had got a little bit of a streak of bad luck on par fives. Didn't birdie any of them at the Open, didn't birdie any of them today. It's just, and I didn't feel like I did anything terribly wrong, right? But that's just golf. It happens. What's done is done, and this week is the most important week of the year right now.
If he lands it pin high, he's going to be off over the pin position and leave himself a tough putt there. That should bite now. He didn't like it by the looks of it, but he'll love it when he sees it.
Just got this before that bunker. Put himself in a good position.
Just a tiny little baby fade, ideally placed.
To tie the lead at 16. Oh, he's playing well, isn't he, John Rahm?
And OMG, what a championship Sunday we just witnessed.
Win, right? Selfishly, you always want to get that done, but you don't want to see a teammate and a good friend, missing a putt for that happening for me.
The Live Golf League delivers every single event, doesn't it? I mean, what an incredible finish there. You know what, Tyrrell Hatton, I feel for him. He's been playing beautiful golf. In fact, since Miami, he's been the best player in our league based on the strokes gained metric.
I'm really happy that I had my first Live Golf win. Now that Kelly and the kids are watching, just knowing that I'm bringing the trophy home for them, it feels good to say that it's coming home.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate. We know that everyone is getting ready. Some are already in the midst and throes of their fantasy football drafts. So let's talk win totals here, Joe, with the remainder of time that we have. It's a great way to understand what kind of offensive ecosystem we have in our teams, what to expect. We'll start the Indianapolis Colts regular season win total for the upcoming NFL season. 8.5 is the number. Over -104, under -118. I'll step in right here and say this is a hard over, but I want to hear from you.
Well, this is your favorite thing, right? Taking this fantasy knowledge, the things that we're talking about, and not only applying it to our fantasy teams, right? And
Yes.
actually using it to make some money on the side too. And that's what we try to do here in FST. We're the nexus of the universe where fantasy and wagering meet. It's going to be a fantastic time. A corner first and first, right? Where that original Ray's Pizza is. But here you go. We love the Colts. We love Richardson. We love Shane Steichen. We love everything about this Colts team and what they could be and how fun they could be to watch. What I always do is I make my win totals in my head. I go through all the teams, and then I go and I look and see what the numbers are. And I have them as a 10-win team, and they're at 8.5. So as you said, smashing the over, -104. I think it's a great value right now on that board as a return on investment. I love that one. So it's an over for me when we come to the Colts. Next, Matt, who is on the board for this win totals? Let's see how we feel about the next one.
He's rubbing his hands, folks. All right, Baltimore Ravens sit at 10.5 is the number. Over 10.5 gets you -122. Under 10.5 is at even money. What's the book trying to tell us here, Joe?
Well, the book is trying to tempt us a little bit here, saying maybe the Ravens aren't that good. You know, they did lose at home in the playoffs, and last time I checked, Lamar Jackson has a couple MVPs. It's like, look, the Ravens are in a spot here. Again, I think they are a 12-win team. I just think that's where we're at. Remember, this is 17 games now. I think people also sometimes in their head just doesn't make the right choices. But you have an over of 10.5 here at -122. Yeah, it's a little bit of juice, but I think this is a great investment. If I'm going to be all in on Derrick Henry as being that missing piece to playing defense, controlling the clock, being a classic grinded out kind of team, which I think is still the Ravens' identity. This is not a team that's going to be super flashy in the passing game. Hopefully Zay Flowers makes a little bit of a step forward this year. I think he's capable of that. Hopefully Andrew stays healthy. They saw a lot out of Isaiah Likely last year too. Maybe he can join that offense a little bit more frequently in some 12 personnel. But let me tell you, the Ravens, no matter how more competitive the Bengals are this year, or even the Steelers are this year, I keep looking at the Ravens as another class of the AFC, so I'm going over on that one.
All right, let's head out to the site of SummerSlam, Cleveland. The Browns slated for 8.5 wins. You can hear Joe groan. Minus 138, under 8.5 wins, plus 112. Joe has conditioned me to not like the Browns, to not see anything in their offensive ecosystem. So I'm going to take the under here. I don't think they can win 9 games. Joe, reinforce this.
A hard under at plus money. Let's go. Sorry. I don't get it. If I'm not investing them in fantasy, then what is telling me that I believe in this offense? Now, I know defensively they still have some talent there. Stefanski's a good football coach, but they're in a tough spot where the quarterback play has been inconsistent, to say the least. Jacoby Brissett was the best guy that they've had in a while. Consistency, they were winning games. Was it spectacular? No. Was it sexy? No, but they were winning. Now I don't know what it's going to be. Is it Watson? Is it Winston? Maybe. I don't know. Could be option 3. You know, at the end of the day, you see Jerry Jeudy this edition, right? He's already dealing with a knee injury. That was the big offseason acquisition for them. You already had Deonta Foreman have an injury. Nick Chubb's not going to be back to what, week 8 or week 9? I'm sorry. But if you're talking about that same division where he said, you know, maybe the Steelers are going to be better than we think. We certainly think the Bengals are going to be better than last year. Right. And we still think the Ravens are one of the class teams of the AFC. That leaves a lot of losses in this division to be fed to the Cleveland Browns. And for my money, Matt, I'm going to be betting this under at the 8.5.
Let me ask you something, just to keep this going, this conversation. You're going to be taking unders with regards to the Browns throughout the season in some of these, like, you know, dogfight games. Is that going to be the strategy?
I think it would be. I think I would also be looking at some of those fun props, like looking at, you know, defenses on the other side to score touchdowns, right? You can throw pick sixes. You're going to turn over the football. You know, Nick Chubb, we don't know even when he comes back what he looks like. And that is also tough. He is 29 years old. I mean, Nick Chubb has been one of the best running backs in football in the last 5-6 years. But it's asking a lot for all of these situations to come out positive. And when you have that many questions, it's very rare in an NFL season you find all good answers for all of those questions. But hopefully we gave you some answers in the last 2 hours for baseball, for football, and a whole lot more. Great work from our crew behind the glass today and behind the scenes. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Matt, I'm Joey P. See you next time, kids.
Technically, despite having the most wins in both the AL and all of Major League Baseball, 52 of them for New York, no longer the best winning percentage.
You expect your front offices to hit that gas pedal when it comes time to get a better team on the field post All-Star break, because the one thing that you know from the Yankees and the Orioles is what, Ben? You're going to fight with each other throughout the stretch here, and you want home field advantage.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You know, this guy is the mad scientist. I mean, he's all about green density. So in my mind, I feel like he's going to have the green speeds dialed in, and the angles he needs to land them and all that sort of stuff. I feel like he's going to be a good spot and playing the course well. And he's going to be hitting less club into a lot of these par threes too. So I just, you know, we're talking about using a live guy. I love Bryson this week. I'm riding with Bryson.
Only on SportsGrid.
This new sports integrity partnership, Genius Sports, is involved in this. More protection.
They said that's going to allow them to beef up their protection and add more integrity monitoring tools to essentially catch bad behavior before it happens. This comes, obviously, after a just ton of scandals we've had across sports betting lately, whether it's the MLB umpire, Pat Hoberg.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Despite me being a Yankee fan, I think Joe would deserve the label as Aaron Judge's biggest fan, not through any bias, but just through the amount of money that he's made anybody who's been betting on him.
I just had him for that home run, and I'm going to go back to it today. That home run coming in at plus 230. Max Fried here, while he has been strong, this is Aaron Judge.
Game time decisions, only on Sport.